It's time for Dads Making a Difference, powered by First Things First. This transformative show will help you learn how to handle the stress of fatherhood, how to better relate to your child, navigate the child support system, and all things that come with being a dad. With your hosts, Reggie Madison and James Frankie Woods.
Studies show that American fathers are more involved with their children than ever in our country. Dads spend an average of almost 8 hours per week taking care of their children at home, up 1 hour per week more than in the past 2 decades. Meanwhile, non-resident fathers' times with their kids are only 36 minutes per week. We all know that's not enough. Unfortunately, in order to make it happen, dads often have to go through the court system to legally spend significant amounts of time with their children. In the system, it doesn't feel great for guys involved in it. But from time to time, I meet a lawyer that gets it. They get the struggle, they get the importance of a dad, and more importantly, the importance of family. And they operate with integrity. And today, I am bringing one of those lawyers to you through these airwaves. Welcome, Attorney Chris Stiles, to the show.
Good man.
Oh, it's so good to be here. And thanks for that, man. That was an awesome introduction.
He did your good, though. I like to say that. I didn't want to say it. You say it this time. But listen.
It's like, who's he talking about? Wait.
and Chattanooga, the name matches the clothing all the time. Mr. Stiles. That's why I love him. Because he always going to be stylish. So just know that when y'all see him, the name matches the clothes.
See, they're gonna tune into YouTube to see what he looked like now.
Oh, my goodness.
That's what I'm saying.
I should have left my sleeves down and everything on. Thanks, guys. Enjoy. Glad I could be here.
Tell us a little bit about you. Who are you and what's your family makeup, that kind of thing?
Wow. How long do we have? So a little about me. I am an attorney here in Chattanooga, originally from Northeast Arkansas. Married to my wife, April, 25 years happily married. We've got 4 kids. Oldest is 21, and she's a junior in college over at Lee. And then I've got a 16-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And the 8-year-old, I'm his baseball coach. So I mean, between kids, wife, work, court, we stay pretty busy.
That's why he's got all the gray beard. I don't know why James got the gray beard, but he got a gray beard for real.
I think mine is just a little stress from the system sometimes, y'all.
It'll do it.
We like to ask every guest that we have on the show this one question. Tell us your daddy story.
Oh my goodness. So I guess that's when I became a dad. So I remember like yesterday finding out my wife we were married, had been married for about 4 years. I was a student undergrad at Lee University, a pastoral ministries major, and she comes in and that thing that typically happens, does a pregnancy test, and she kind of collapses because we were broke. She was working, I was a college student, I was working too, but I mean, it was in our mid-20s, kind of a little later in life, trying to finish a bachelor's degree. And it was in that moment that I just remember looking at her when she kind of sank in the bathroom floor and just said, hey, I don't know how, but God's going to help us through this. Fast forward a few months, I remember coming home, my oldest was born, at the time it was the East Ridge Hospital. I think it's Park Ridge East now over in East Ridge. Yeah. But almost 22 years ago, excuse me, I remember getting on the interstate when I'd loaded that precious cargo in the vehicle and was driving about 45 miles an hour because I was scared to death if I drove any faster what was going to happen. But I tell you, Reggie, and I tell people this all the time, I thought I knew what love was when I married my wife. I didn't really know what love was till I laid eyes on my first kid. And then it's amazing that everyone that's come along since then, just thinking how my heart can't grow anymore. There's not anything else that I have to give here, and with everyone, it just seems to grow, and the capacity just increases. And I remember my parents telling me, I've got a younger sister, that we love both of you. It's a little different, but we equally. And it is. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing because my kids are so unique. They have some things where they're very similar. They have other things where they're just exact opposites. But being a dad is the greatest privilege. And I've had a lot of jobs. I've had a lot of titles. I've done a lot of things. But that is the greatest privilege that I think we have as men to be able to step into that role. And honestly, every day I live, I try to do something more than anything else. I like it when other people say nice things, but I want to be the person that my kids are proud of.
That's good.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That is really good stuff.
Yeah.
So the father Chris Stiles and the lawyer Chris Stiles, how do you separate those two when you go home?
Wow. Y'all didn't tell me it was going to be such hard questions.
So I'm gonna tell you, we used to do a script. I keep one. We don't even give James one anymore. So you never know what James gonna come with. But I love it.
Right.
So, I won't say this about everybody else because I don't know how other people are when they're out, and I can't say that I'm the same everywhere because obviously there's certain situations that call for a different role. I don't dress like this at the house, but in everything that I do, I strive to be consistent with who I am. I don't want to. I don't know the best way to say it, but I try not to change, how I respond in things. Now, of course, I talk to my kids different than I would to the judges when I'm in court, or to sometimes to opposing parties or opposing counsel. My kids say from time to time that sometimes the other people get a better side of me because my fuse may not be quite as long sometimes with my kids.
That's real.
I'm one of those that I expect the very best out of my kiddos. I try to give them grace, but there's certain things that is, in school, and Reggie and I've talked about this before, we homeschool all our kids. If a B's the best they can do, that's what I expect. But if an A's the best they can do, B's aren't good enough. In everything that they do, that's kind of how I've always been, because I want them to excel and exceed in life. But as far as there's a way we have to talk in court and words that we use, and my wife will tell me from time to time that if there's something going on as simple as trying to figure out where we're going to go eat with that many people in a minivan, there's no agreeing on anything. But somebody will say something about, hey, let's go here, and somebody else will say, let's go here, and then I start into negotiation mode. And my wife will stop from time to time and go, hey, we're not in court. We're just trying to decide which fast food restaurant we're going to right now. So, that is something that I have to kind of back off on, especially with my younger kids. My older ones kind of pick up on, their vocabulary is just amazing. But my younger ones will stop me from time to time and go, hey, what are you talking about? So that's something to kind of back up. But yeah, I try as far as, my compass in life, my true north is the same regardless of whether I'm in court, at the office, when I was an attorney, when I was a pastor, all these other different roles. That part of me didn't change. But there is a little bit of difference between, hanging around the kids or watching a TV show or something, or playing on the ball field or something along those lines, as opposed to being in a courtroom.
That's good. So you do a lot of family law. And we've kind of heard it, I think, already, but tell us kind of your heart in that. Like, how did that come about, and what is kind of your perspective, or how do you approach that?
So if you would have told me years ago when I was sitting in a law school classroom that I was going to be a family law attorney, I would have laughed. That was not what I had desired, or, honestly, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I was going to law school. I got out of law school and came to Chattanooga and started doing appointed cases, what they call them. When someone can't afford an attorney, the court will appoint people on your behalf. And at some point in time, I was doing a lot of criminal stuff. I was doing a lot of criminal representation, not illegal things on my part, but doing some criminal representation. Got involved in the child support court here in Hamilton County, representing guys who had been, or parents who had been, a petition was filed for contempt against them for failure to pay like they were supposed to. And then got involved with a lot of DCS cases where Department of Children's Services were removing children or filing restraining orders and all those kind of things. At some point in time, we had a guy that came in with us for a few months that was working out of my office. He had a heart to do the criminal stuff, so I'm like, hey, you take all that, I'll shift over to these other things and we'll kind of see where we are. COVID hit, changed the world as we knew it. That gentleman took a job somewhere else because of financial things, and that left me with the family law stuff, and I kind of decided to focus on that and walk away from doing the criminal representation and those things, and really, honestly, just kind of narrowed the focus to we do basically emergency custody and child support type cases. We really don't do a whole lot of the other. Most of the time when you hear the term family law, you're dealing with people, attorneys that do a lot of divorces. That's never been anything that I've focused on. I've handled a few of those, but the focus that we've chosen to do is emergency custody where a kid's actually in danger through a host of things, or child support type cases, and we do some stuff where we're trying to help dads get back in their kids' lives. I mean, that's a focus for us as well, which is kind of where we connected at some point in time. But and the heart of it is, I still do a lot of the court-appointed things. I have people tell me all the time I need to quit doing that. And I literally earlier this year had backed out of a bunch of those cases for several months. And then just through a lot of prayer and contemplation, just decided, hey, I've got to get back into this, because I'm one of those that believes if our system says that you're entitled to an attorney, I believe you're not just entitled to any attorney. I think you should have a good one. I focus down on what I do because I want to be really knowledgeable in the type of cases that we take, so that I can be one of those people that know what the law is and which way it should go, and know the judges and magistrates that I'm in front of on a regular basis and how they kind of rule, because I think that's something very important to talk to clients about, that this judge typically goes this way, or this magistrate typically goes this way on this type of information. And focusing in on the types of cases that we chose to focus in on at our law firm was kind of more along the lines of can't really say that we're specializing in something, because the bar doesn't allow us to use that type of language, and there's not really a specialist for what I do. But it's easier to focus on one small area of the law and kind of know those things inside and out. At least attempt to, as opposed to all the different books and all the different codes for the state of Tennessee, and knowing where we are and what we have to do on all those things. So I mean, the passion part of it just is, you kind of let off with it. I think that kids need their parents in their lives. I think that we live in a society where people make mistakes, whether that's mom, dad, or both. But I believe very strongly in the power of redemption and the power of change, and I think people can actually learn to do better. And when they do, I think we should help them have the opportunity to get back in their kids' lives, because kids need that.
Yeah. That's good. As part of that, how, with dads, okay, and a lot of people really don't know the child support system, they don't know the shared parenting system or custodial system, that kind of thing. And so when a person gets introduced to that, what is off in their mindset when you see them for, early in that process?
Wow. Just talking across the board, child support, custody, anything?
Yeah, let's do custody. Let's talk about that in particular.
Well, Reggie, I think it's honestly, when people are walking into the court system, this is not strange, not unique. I don't know that it matters if it's in child support court, if it's in custody court, if it's in criminal court, if it's on anything else. A lot of people have the thought process that if I can just walk in there and tell that person in the robe my side, obviously things are going to go my way. And that's not really how our legal system works. Especially if the other side of that case has an attorney, they're going to come in and basically object to a bunch of things, and you can't just walk in there and lay it out. I mean, we do these cases all the time where people just think, hey, we need 10 minutes in a courtroom. When we get 10 minutes in a courtroom, we can get all this resolved. And it can take a year to get that 10 minutes, and it's never 10 minutes. It's always longer than that. But the first thing is, if you're ever given the opportunity to hire an attorney, the court asks you if you want time, the answer is always yes, or I know I can't afford one, and if you qualify, if the case type qualifies for a court-appointed counsel, take it. Well, people will say, well, wouldn't I be better off if I paid somebody? Chances are, that very well could be the case, but if you can't afford the $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is to pay for it, you're better off with someone that's got a law degree helping you through this process than you are trying to go it alone, 99 times out of 100. But that's the first thing, I think, is people will walk in and just think, we've been in child support court before, and somebody thinking I'm going to talk my way out of this, and I'm like, nah, that's not how this works. And many times when people do that, it's out of nerves. We get nervous and we talk a lot. That's how most people are. We're not real comfortable with silence, so when there's quietness in the courtroom, people just start kind of blurting stuff out. And most of the time, that winds up biting you in the backside. Because it's viewed as being disrespectful in the court. So that's the first thing. One, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, be respectful. And then the next is if the case allows you to get court-appointed counsel, you always want that, or always at least want to see if you qualify. That's a very big thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there before James asks you the next thing. We've seen so many guys, come in. He's represented some of our guys, and it's been, they normally come back. If they've been represented by Chris, they normally say, man, that's a good guy. Like, he actually feels like he is for it. And that's not the case with all lawyers. Some, they come off as though they're really for the money, and some they feel like they're just for the system. But for guys often in this process who generally don't feel like the system is for them, to feel like a lawyer who often they can't, if you're court appointed, they're not paying you, right? And for those that are, it ain't cheap. It's not cheap. But I also know that some of those cases aren't the high profile, expensive cases. And to feel like that they still get represented as though it's a high-profile case goes a long way for guys. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Right. So that walks me into my next question. You as a lawyer, and some of these guys doesn't realize, sometimes it doesn't take a lawyer. But if you got a lawyer, what can you tell these fathers, or just anybody who can help them out with working with you, or just working with a lawyer, period? Because some guys just don't realize that they just need the knowledge from you for 2 hours. They might just need the knowledge. In order for them to help their case, they don't need to sit down with you for 2 hours telling you 2 hours of what's going on. You can say, these 2 hours, I can help you help yourself. That helps me help your case.
So, several things. Number one, keep up with all the paperwork related to your case. Let's be honest, most of us guys are terrible at that. Get a folder, run to Walmart, Target somewhere, buy a folder or something to keep stuff in when you get something from the court. If the other side has an attorney, you get all those things, keep that stuff together. Number two, and I think this is something I say every time I'm with you guys in one of the programs, if you get paperwork telling you there's a court date on it, you need to be there. I mean, that is bad things happen in court when you don't show up. You know, especially if we're talking child support. I mean, you've got either contempt, set support, modify, or those kind of. If you don't show up for a court date, then the other side can honestly present their entire side of the case. I mean, you go from making minimum wage to the other side says you make, you know, $300 an hour, and guess what? Child support goes through the roof. And if you get the kid every other weekend, but they walk in and say you haven't seen the kid in 6 months, if you're not there to defend yourself, then you hadn't seen the kid in 6 months. So show up for court. Again, if you're given the time to talk to an attorney, I'm not saying necessarily hire one, but you always, you know, if you get a petition that says you've got court in 6 weeks, when you get to court on that day, every judge, every magistrate I know in our area will ask, would you like time to consult or hire an attorney or see if you qualify for court appointed if the case allows for that? The answer to that is always yes. I want time to get this stuff worked out. Especially, let me back up and say this, especially if the other side, if it's being contentious. You know, if you guys have worked everything out, then yeah, by all means, leave us out of it. Leave, you know, submit the paperwork. Hey, the, you know, child support worksheets, we tell people all the time. Those things are spreadsheets that you plug the numbers in, it spits out a number and says what it is. If you're okay with that, everybody's okay with it, and it is what it is at that point, then submit it and be done with it. You probably don't need us. But, you know, if it's the other side's hired an attorney and they're coming after you for things, and you know, let's face it, how half of these cases wind up is not only now are they trying to get child support, but the time that you were being able to see the kid without a court order is now being pulled back from you where you can't get it and all these things. Talk with someone, schedule a consult. They're not always free. Sometimes you have to pay for it, but I can tell you right now, an hour worth of an attorney's time, even paying for a consult, could save you thousands of dollars down the road, you know, as it relates to child support matters or custody issues and those kind of things.
Wow, that's good. That's good. That's helpful. And that's part of why we do this program, because we are trying to make some of this information accessible so that for guys entering the system, you don't feel blindsided. We've had guys that said they walked in, they had no clue what's coming in. They walked out of that courtroom with $12,000, $13,000, $15,000 in debt that they had no idea was coming, because they thought that they just went in there and got a chance to tell their story, it would all be fine. And so I'm appreciative of people like you who really have the heart to really fight and help families stay together, man. We ask every guest many of these last 5 questions. We don't throw them at you.
Okay.
All right? And so we changing it up a little bit, okay? So the first one I'm going to ask is, what makes dads irreplaceable?
Wow. I don't have to give a politically correct answer for that.
No.
So, you know, again, I mean, my belief system, my worldview, and everything is shaped by my childhood upbringing in church and all those things. And I mean, I think from a scriptural perspective, there's just something inherently different about being a father. My wife is amazing. She is an awesome mother, and her relationship with my children is completely different than mine. But there is just something different, you know, about being how I view a protector for my family and a provider for my family. My role is to take stress off of them and to, I don't know of a better way to say it, but I want to be the person that, because of the foundation that I laid, they can stand on my shoulders and see further than I ever could. I don't want to be and make it necessarily easy for my children, because I think, you know, there's a lot of things we learn through struggles and having to fight to get to a certain place. But on the other hand, I want to provide opportunities for them that maybe I didn't have, and take some of the worry and the stress, and you know, and they need to know, no matter what they do, no matter where they go, no matter who they're with, no matter any of those things, they've got somebody that's always in their corner cheering them on. And that's a big part to me.
Gotcha. So what is the most craziest, funniest, and most positive thing you've done with any of your kids?
Craziest, funniest. Oh my goodness! I don't know if that's radio appropriate.
Yes, it is. Let's go. Yes, it is. We have the story.
Man, it's different for every single one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's.
Pick one.
Just pick one.
Craziest fun. Man, that's one I should have had about 3 weeks ago to think about because I can't narrow that down. I don't know.
We'll come back if we have time.
Get me with that one again.
Advice that you advice you have given your younger self.
So if I could go back, build a time machine, and go back in time, one thing I would probably tell myself, there are certain cases I got into I probably shouldn't take.
Right.
It's, I think we'd all, there's probably people in our lives that if we could go back and go, if I could have just avoided that person, I probably could have avoided some headache. But I'm one of those guys that I try my best to live my life with no regrets. So honestly, if I could go back and give myself advice, it'd be hang on. And the reason I say that is at nearly 50 years old, I turned 48 this year, but looking back at myself in my 30s and in my 20s, when I was going through some of the hardships and the struggles that I was going through at that time, I remember crying out, praying, asking, God, why? And in the moment, in that time, if I would have heard a voice from heaven or my future self would have visited and said, hey, here's what's going to, I wouldn't have believed any of that. It's just, I'm suffering for the cause of suffering is what it felt like it. But knowing now of the things that I've been through and the person it's allowed me to become, I wouldn't change any of it.
So what's the biggest barriers you see for non-traditional fathers?
Oh, Tennessee's a mother's right state. That's the biggest thing, and people don't understand that. If the couple is not married when the child is born, all custody resides with the mother until dad files something. And we've talked about that in other settings, but the biggest thing with that, and the advice I would give most people most of the time is while things are going good, work out a parenting plan. Because if you could do it then and everybody agrees on it, because what winds up happening is when mom and dad break up, then all of a sudden, man, it's going to sound terrible. Either dad moves on to somebody that mom doesn't like, or mom moves on to somebody, and it goes sideways.
Chris, to your point, man, and I've if it was up to me, every parent that weren't together, they'd have to do that from the jump. Chris, it has been so good to have you on this show.
Yes, it has.
You are making a difference, not only in dad's making a difference, but also, I'm sure, with your own kids and your own family. So thanks for what you do and keep making a difference.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You've been listening to Dad's Making a Difference, powered by First Things First. Join us for our next episode right here.